everyone, and welcome to In Sync with Her. This is a collaborative podcast between SPADES and Radio LUMS. I'm Javeria.
And I'm Sana.
And we'll be your host for the very first episode. For this episode, we have an incredible guest with us who truly is the embodiment of what women in STEM can achieve.
We have in the studio Sadaf Rehman. Sadaf is a graduate in computer science from LUMS, and she's done a master's in business administration as well. She's the co-founder of Code School, a platform which is revolutionizing coding education and coding literacy for children within Pakistan and around the world. Since 2021, Code School has had over 1,600 children registered, which has set the stage for a new generation of STEM enthusiasts. Sadaf's work is groundbreaking. She's a recipient of prestigious awards such as the Stanford Seed Spark Award and Visa's She's Next Award. Beyond her contributions to tech education, Sadaf has played a significant role in Pakistan's education policy and advocating for economic empowerment. We'll talk more about this in our conversation with her ahead.
Sadaf, it is truly an honor to have you here with us. But before we jump into it, a little bit about who we are and why we're doing this. Women in STEM is an initiative by SPADES to empower and uplift women all across Pakistan in fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. We're all about creating space, opportunities, and mentorship for women in these fields. With In Sync with Her, we take this one step further. This podcast is all about real stories from women across diverse fields. Many of them are traditionally very male-dominated. And we want to learn from their journeys, their struggles, and their successes. So Sadaf, welcome once again.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
We'll begin with your childhood. We want to know about how it was, looking back at your childhood. We want to know, you could share some early experiences that shaped maybe your curiosity in science and what led to, you working in science and technology later on, and also the role of your parents, because we were just reading about it, how you learned logo at a very young age, and also how your brother, he also taught himself programming, which is very new because considering children in Pakistan, you're not very exposed to technology, especially these fields at such a young age. So we were really intrigued and we want to know how it all began, and especially the role of your parents in all of this.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The risk of dating myself, you're going to need to understand what life was like pre-internet, right? Like anything to do with tech was really fun and very exciting because our lives were analog. We would go outside and we would play, and there was almost nothing digital. I remember VCRs being like the only interaction with digital, and that also had buttons. Do you see what I mean? Like I've noticed, with my son, everything is just virtual or abstracted away, and even the buttons that you use to interact with tech no longer somehow exist. But it was an analog world, and anything digital was very exciting, was very cool, and was just a lot of fun because we had Atari and Nintendo and that was what tech was for us. And my father was a programmer in the early 70s, the late 60s, early 70s. He had done programming as part of his engineering degree in the US. And at that time, those were third generation computers. They were very big. They were like calculators, and you had to put in programs you feed a paper into a printer. You would feed in punch cards into computers for them to process the calculations. And so we kind of grew up in an unusual household for Pakistan. We were one of the first 50 households to get residential internet in Pakistan. And I think in school, I remember learning logo, like you had mentioned. It was just something that I feel was so exciting that has been lost over the last 3 decades. Because if I look at a current coding class, if it even exists in any school, it is incredibly boring. It is like a drill-based version, and kids dread it almost like they used to dread math, right? Like it was just like one of those subjects. I know we're sitting in the School of Science and Engineering, so maybe that's not the kind of experience that we had, but typically, traditionally, these are subjects that they're considered to be dry and boring subjects, and unfortunately, coding has been lumped into it, but that's not the experience we had at all. And Asad, my co-founder, and my brother, I think he had a very interesting journey with tech because he was super smart. Like, I think he was gifted, and he managed to pick up coding through books when it wasn't a thing. He was learning, C at a time when he was just 8 years old, and that is extraordinary. But I think if I look at his journey, he struggled in school. He did not fit well in school. He did not do well. Even in his undergrad, he either got distinctions or he got Fs. He got nothing in the middle, right? Like, because schooling systems are not quite made to the individual child. They cater to the average. And so I think that also, and spending the last 20 years in education, is what kind of coalesced around the pandemic into this journey that started Code
I think
School.
you make a very good point here. The education system, it's not one size fits all, yahan pe wo wali cheese, or how the education system works here. We'll talk about this later as well when we talk about the education system in Pakistan, how it will change. But let's talk about your journey at LUMS, thoda zyada ab.
Sure. I think, what would you like to know more specifically?
So we'd like to know specifically how your journey at LUMS, the curriculum that perhaps you studied here, or your journey with programming as a CS major in LUMS, how did it help in entrepreneurship with you, and in terms of starting Code School, how did those skills sort of play a part in your career as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, because I still struggle with being called a woman in tech. I know this is about women in tech, but I feel like I am not a woman in tech. I don't know why, even though, all indications might seem otherwise. And I think it's because there was no such thing as women in STEM. There was no one I knew who was a woman in STEM. There is absolutely no person I know who graduated in computer science and stayed in Pakistan who went into anything other than teaching. And so I think whoever has done a career in tech went abroad for their masters, or because they got married, or they settled elsewhere, and that's where their tech careers kind of thrived or grew. And so I think it was a very interesting kind of, I didn't want to go into IT tech support in a large multinational. I didn't see myself doing that at all. And so I didn't even consider this as a career, because it wasn't at that time. I'm glad to see things have changed so much. I'm so glad to see that there are role models. But I think it's so easy to say this is just a platform. It exists, but it didn't exist. And I think it's made a huge difference, I hope, in the lives of whoever is kind of listening to this.
Inshallah.
I think so I went into the corporate sector. So they did a test for me. So I literally graduated. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had a computer science degree because I enjoyed studying it. And I literally was like, I don't know what to do. So Engro at that time used to do a batch test. And so I did some kind of IQ test kind of thing. And they said, okay, great, you have really good numerical skills. So let's put you in finance. And so that's how I ended up in finance in my first role. And I think the next 5 years where I was in the corporate sector, I was just kind of trying to figure out, okay, this is who I am. This is what I can do. These are what the skills, are how are they manifesting into how I'm going to add value to work. But finance was not my thing at all. I kind of bounced around a lot of places, but I found my home in the nonprofit sector, which is when I landed and I felt, yes, this is right. I felt like everything clicked into place. And I think that is something that's given my life purpose for the last 15, 16 years that I've been in the space.
That's very cool. Just to draw a parallel here, when you were doing your undergrad and your masters, which is also from LUMS campus, so how would you talk about the women to men ratio yahan pe? Because we just want to draw a parallel with the batch size we have right now in 2024 and us waqt, a few years ago.
Yeah, so we were the biggest undergrad batch at that time. We were, all of LUMS was 300 and our batch was 300. And so I know it sounds funny because now I think there are 5,000 students, so many different schools and so many different programs. And I think the distinction wasn't quite clear because there weren't different schools. There was undergrad and there was MBA, and that was it. It was a very simpler program. There was one building. there was a lot of overlapping courses as well. So I had a
Right.
lot of my classmates who were math majors. In our final year, the math major was introduced. It was just
Right.
social studies or computer science, economics, and social studies. And so we all took a lot of similar
Different
courses
courses,
together because we
yeah.
had to. It was part of our graduation requirement. So I don't think there was that much distinction.
So Sadaf, you've talked a lot about now how you got into starting Code School, but certainly Code School is an initiative that essentially is supposed to bring coding to students, right, at a young age, and it started off in Pakistan. Were there any reservations that you had in terms of the response that you would get, or perhaps like any challenges that you faced?
So one of the big challenges is definitely legal, but you also have financial flows. That is a really big issue in Pakistan. It's unique to us. These are the nuts and bolts of how entrepreneurship and business work. And so when we won the Visa HBL Cheese Next Award, that had a cash prize that had to be transferred to us from the US, and that transfer disappeared. Everyone else got it, but it disappeared for us, and we could not locate it. The bank didn't seem to know where it was. It didn't come in. There was absolutely zero interest, and it took somebody from Visa escalating to somebody at our bank, very senior, and there was an email trail, and then somehow miraculously within 24 hours it got resolved. So while there are rules and policies, perhaps there is some kind of culture of things not working or getting done as they're supposed to, that is very, I would say, bizarre and difficult when you're an entrepreneur. But then within that, there is an equal amount of opportunity, right? Because we have tens of thousands of computer science graduates, and in the rest of the world, there is a dearth of STEM graduates. We have so many of them, but I felt like they are being written off as unemployable because of whatever reason, many different reasons, right? But the issue is not that they're employable. The issue is that perhaps there are an HR process that isn't able to identify what their strengths are and what they can best do. And so I think the Code School has hugely benefited from this by having a technical screening where we test for the technical skills of a candidate, regardless of their degree, regardless of the school they've come from. And then we do fit and motivation training, screening for sure. But then if you have the right raw material, we can, within a few months, train you and certify you as an instructor, even if you're very young. I think what we found is that a traditional ICT teacher would tremendously struggle with delivering the Code School program because they have a certain set way of doing things and are not as technically sound. A lot of if you look at the Venn diagram of programmers and early school, junior school, primary level ICT teachers, they just don't overlap at all. And so the idea of taking a programmer, giving an additional revenue stream by just having them teach a class for an hour a week, and having those technical skills provided to any child in the world is a very powerful story. And I think that is something that opportunity that exists in Pakistan because of us, because of our people, because of the talent. I think that makes it worth whatever challenges that come our way.
We'll come back to this as well, but before that, let's give a contrasting perspective to the journey of Code School. So we want to know what were the moments when you felt like I made it, or because Code School has come a long way, you have come a long way. So what were those moments for you?
That's funny because I still feel like we have not come a long way. There's so much more to go.
But it's incredible. You guys started in 2021, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's within 3 years, you've had over 1,600 students. That's amazing progress.
Yeah, we just crossed the 2,000 mark. So we're super excited about that this quarter. And so I think for us, for me at least, when you're iterating and things are changing so quickly, for example, I started in the pandemic by teaching my son and his friends how to code games so that they could have fun, right? I thought it was a fun thing. Right. And then they started playing those games with their siblings and cousins and family friends, and then they started enrolling. And so people started sending money to our house, and I said, no, we have to have a website, so because I'm not going to accept cash. So then the website came up. Then we had, 150 kids. We had to hire instructors very quickly so we could start teaching them. Then we didn't have curriculum, so I had to pull in my brother and get his input in what we should be teaching and what that map should look like. So everything's been iterating so fast. But I think what I personally, my biggest it has been, the biggest barrier has been kind of believing that I am a tech entrepreneur, that I am a woman in tech, that I actually am doing a good job, like for example, pitching or trying this whole area of kind of selling what you're doing is so alien to me. Perhaps as a woman, perhaps of whatever I've internalized over my career, it's considered to be very forward or very untoward or very kind of, brazen to like go talk about what I've done. And or talk about what good things Code School has done, because naturally we gravitate towards what is all the stuff we haven't done, or what all the challenges we're facing. And so I think it took me around winning 4 competitions before I realized that, okay, maybe I do know how to pitch. I don't think I believed it till the 4th one.
We can certify that here.
And so I think maybe regardless of what is happening externally or what's winning, I think it's the personal journey that has been the most interesting for me.
Certainly. I think we can shift the conversation now to a little bit about your work within Pakistan's education policy. So we've talked a lot about the education sector in general and how you feel that it's a little dated, the way that we're teaching IT, the way that we're teaching computer science within school curriculums, right? But I think within the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a significant shift in perhaps the way students engage with technology, with now ChatGPT coming into play, with artificial intelligence. How do you see, as having considered the fact that you've been a technical lead for the National Curriculum Council, how do you see the evolution of technology being integrated into the Pakistani national educational curriculum?
Yeah, I think that's education. Reform is interesting because there's this trope that we use, right? Like if Rip Van Winkle was to wake up today, he'd be amazed by, cell phones and electricity and the internet or whatever, and self-driving cars. But then if he was to walk into a classroom, he would see exactly the same thing he saw 100 years ago. And so the whole premise of education has changed for everyone in the world. We are at an inflection point in education policy because of technology. The purpose of education is no longer to create factory workers. The purpose of education is to create people who know how to think. And so that retooling has been very difficult. It's been a change because there's no subject that says critical thinking. Right? And you say, okay, now you've learned it, you know how to do it. Critical thinking comes about in changing the way that you teach. And then that involves textbooks, questions that you're asking, teachers, how have they educated, how are they trained, what are the metrics by which we judge students learning, so there's a learning outcome. So there's a huge kind of shift that's happening. I'm proud of the work that we did in the National Curriculum Council, because that was based off our work in developing the coding curriculum for Code School. So based on that, we were brought in to kind of lead this piece and see how we could. The last curriculum had been written in 2006 for computer science. So you can imagine how much of it had how much of that industry had changed since the reform was done. And so we had pulled in a group of volunteers from all over the world who were domain experts, and they were volunteering completely free of cost to do this. So they authored the learning outcomes. We had to push this through all the provincial education experts that were appointed for the subject of computer science. It was a very interesting exercise, but because of the 18th Amendment, it's not, education is not a federal it's not a federal thing, it's a provincial thing. So every province had to come on board and then sign off on it. And as of April this year, this curriculum for computer science that is now world class was adopted in Pakistan as well. So we're one of the
yay.
few countries that are doing things that, because it's the most recent, right? Like
Yeah.
we've introduced AI, we've introduced the use of generative AI and what it is, how to use it, what's the best way to use it, safe search, emails, all these. There's a bit of digital skills along
Yeah.
with all these really interesting domains from middle school all the way up to inter.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge, as always, is going to be in the implementation, because we might exist really well on paper, but what does that really translate into a classroom? And that is where I think there's been some forward movement, but there is a lot more to do.
Definitely. We just have one last question before we move to a few very short segments of this episode. This is very women-centric, and we want to know, as a woman in science, a woman in STEM and tech, there's an imposter syndrome that a lot of women face, right? Particularly when they start their careers. So what advice, because you've been through that, so what advice would you give to all of these women out there who are maybe starting their careers, or who will, or maybe they're facing such a symptom, or such a syndrome? Shit, sorry.
We can repeat the
I
question.
said symptom.
Question.
Okay. Before we move on to the next segment, where we will have a few very short questions, we just have this very last question that is very women centric. There's this imposter syndrome that a lot of women face when they begin their career, especially in science and tech. So since you've been through all of that, what advice would you give to women who are maybe starting their careers or who are going through this?
You know, that's really tough, because I still definitely suffer tremendously from imposter syndrome. I think I often joke about how if there was imposter syndrome Olympics, I would be like shooing for the gold. But I think I've noticed a change in language on how the next generation talks about themselves and their sense of self-worth. So whatever you want to say about social media messaging and all the things that are bad that go with it, I think there has been enough advocacy to shift and have kids, not just girls, understand that what their self-worth is and how it is not pinned to anything external, but it has to do with how you feel internally. Personally, I think the messaging that we received was to be silent, to be seen and not heard, to not talk too much, to not just be silent, to do the work, to suffer in silence, and to be the martyr. And that was like, the hero. That's the hero. If you think about women that are successful, that's not necessarily the kind of qualities that you would want them to have at all. So I'm not sure I have any advice other than be true to yourself, because at the end of the day, no one else is going to have to bear the burden of the decisions you are making. And so do not listen to society, do not listen to your families, do not listen to your friends. Listen to what you think is right. That is your true north. And take advice if there are gaps, but know that you are the one that's going to have to bear the burden of those decisions. And so be happy with the decision that you're making.
Okay.
Absolutely love that.
Right, now we'll move on to our final segment, which is just a quick rapid fire. So we'll ask you we'll share some popular myths related to STEM and tech, and usually related to being a woman in tech, and you'll have to debunk those for us. You have to tell us whether they're correct or not. So we can start off with the first myth. You need a high IQ to succeed in STEM.
No, not at all. I mean, not IQ. I think raw talent is there, but hard work and discipline will get you further. So you just have to have an interest, and you will go much further than what you would on just IQ alone.
For our second myth, which is also something you just mentioned on how the situation for females in STEM has changed, but it is said women in STEM, they don't face any challenges today.
Oh, that's so untrue. But I think women face everyone faces challenges, but women face a very unique set of different challenges, I would say, that perhaps men would face. And wherever you're in the minority, you will face problems. And so tech is no different as a sector. Where any place women are minority, they will definitely face challenges. So
Yes.
Our next myth is you have to choose between a family and a successful STEM career.
not at all. I mean, look, there is a lot of balancing that you have to do, and there are many women that have done a lot more that can probably say this as well, where you can't do everything all the time. Anytime you're working on your career, your family will suffer. Anytime you're focusing on your family, your career is suffering. But it's just about juggling things in a way where everything stays aloft and things don't fall too much. And so I think that is definitely unique to women. I don't think I know of a single man who faces this level of juggling that they have to do between home and career.
Okay, we can have this myth. There's absolutely no room for creativity in STEM.
Oh, of course not. That is not true at all. Maybe just an example of all the kids that come into code school that are artistic. So, their parents had initially said, what will they do in coding? They're artists at heart, but they are making their own sprites in the games that they're coding, or they are expressing themselves digitally, their creative skills digitally. Their creativity can be in the solution that you are offering in a process. I don't think that has anything to do with the area or the sector or the industry.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next short segment, which is we'll give you certain statements and you have to tell us a red flag and a green flag between them. So the first one is, in a job interview, what's a red flag and what's a green flag?
Oh, a red flag is a sense of entitlement. Not a sense of self-worth, but a sense of entitlement that doesn't match. So, for example, if you have we once had an intern who had reached out to us and said, I want to inform policy and I want to be a part of policy making decisions. And we had to say, you're an intern, you're not going to do any of that at all. So I think that's a red flag. And green flag is just you hire for attitude and you train for skills. So if you can have a good attitude, be willing to learn, you're going to go so far.
Okay, so in work-life balance, what's a red flag and what's a green flag?
Oh my gosh. A red flag is a feeling of being unhappy, or any kind of dissonance is the flag that will tell you that there is something wrong and you need to readjust.
Right.
In setting personal goals, what's a red flag and what's a green flag?
The red flag is pegging your goal to something that is irrelevant. So if you want to do something just to get money, you're not going to make it, because it's such an arbitrary and insignificant goal that you will very quickly tire and not be able to go the distance. There are things that but if you're pegging it to a higher purpose, that is something that's going to get you through the hard times. So that's definitely a green flag. Have a more meaningful goal and understand why you're doing what you want to do, rather than have some external materialistic factor that you're trying to achieve.
Right. The last one is, in team collaborations, what's a red flag and a green flag?
Oh.
A lot of interesting stories that you have been on.
So I think, as an undergrad, those group projects.
Yeah, we're going through that.
It never changes. I'm sorry, guys. It's like that forever.
Oh no.
Because human nature is like that as well. I think a red flag is contempt. If there is anyone in the group who feels that they know more, or the others are not bringing enough to the table, contempt will kill any relationship, professional or otherwise. And so there has to be mutual respect, whatever, in any conversation on any table.
Perfect. I think this is it. I just have this last two questions. One of my favorite questions that I love asking women: what is your favorite part about being a woman?
Oh, being a mom, I have to say. I think that is the one thing. My son changed my world. When I had my son in 2012, I feel like the world shifted and became parents who understand and parents who don't, and people who don't.
Oh.
And so I think that was one of the things I wouldn't trade for the world.
And what is one thing that you wish women would do more often?
Believe in themselves. I know so many amazing, accomplished women who, feel like they are less because of what others have told them or what impression they are getting from whatever arbitrary metric the world has assigned to our gender. And so I really wish that the world was full of more people that knew their worth.
Right. Thank you so much for coming, Sadaf.
Oh,
It was an honor to have you in the studio with us today. If there's any final words that you'd like to say to our audience, particularly the women who are watching.
I think in terms of words of wisdom, what I would recommend is just keep this in mind. This too shall pass. I know this is like such a cliche, but it's so true. And I think that's what's gotten me through. In good times, it's a sobering reminder that enjoy it, but know that it's not going to last. And in tough times, when things get really dark, just know that it's going to pass and things are going to get better. So that's it. This too shall pass.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sadaf, for joining and for sharing your journey. And for all those who are watching, we hope you learned something. You're inspired by something. This is it for the first episode of In Sync with Her, and we'll see you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.